Welcome, everyone. I'm Steve Schlisky, the chair of Programs and Activities Committee. And this morning, we're going to bring you a call for entry special Zoom with Wayne Friedman answering all your questions. And first, we're going to go through all the changes and all of the additions and deletions from our call for entries this year and bring everybody up to date. There will be a chance for questions and answers at the end. And without further ado, I'd like to introduce Wayne Friedman. You all know him. You all love him. Wayne.
I don't know if they all love me. Good morning, everybody. And thank you for giving a part of your Saturday for us. But hell, it's raining. What the heck? Joyce Mitchell is there. She's on our awards committee. Joshua Mellers is also here. He's from our awards committee. Toby Montez is here. He's from our awards committee. Pamela Young is here. She's from our awards committee. Do we have other awards committee members here? We have... Hi, Luis. Cadonas is here. So we have a lot of awards committee members here who hopefully will help me answer all the questions because there's a heck of a lot to remember. We decided to do this Zoom call for a number of reasons. The first is for you, to help you enter this contest more effectively and to pass along tips to improve your chances of winning. Of course, we're going to answer your questions, as Steve said, and we're also going to try to show you how to work Emmy Express. We have ulterior motives here. We want to make this as easy as possible for you during certification. And we also want to make it easier on us so that we don't have to send as many emails to you at the end of the year, at the end of the certification saying, do this again, do this, do this, do this. Please follow the rules. I mean, last year we wrote some 250 emails easily, wouldn't you say, Joshua, between Spanish and English? A lot. So, and of course, the last thing we want to do here is we want to try to acquaint you with what is amounting to a new call for entries. It's different from what you've seen in the past. You've probably already noticed that. The reality is the Academy needed to stay in step with changes in the business, and we needed to reflect the presence of the internet and those kind of programs. So you find some different terms this year. But essentially, at its core, the contest and the categories are the same. There have been some changes, however, and let's begin by just running through some of the changes that we've seen in the Emmy Awards thus far. We have a deadline on the 8th of January. That is the first thing you need to know. Get them in by the 8th. We've had a grace period in the past, but we really frowned upon doing that. So that doesn't mean send them in on the 7th. That means try to get them in as soon as you possibly can, because if there are changes that need to be made, we want to get those things finished beforehand, not after. If you have any questions, I'm going to say this a million times. If you have questions, please call us. Just drop me a phone call, send me a text, send me an email. If you send me an email, put a phone number on it, please, to us or any member of this committee, and we will call you back. It's a lot easier to have a conversation than it is an email discussion. Okay, let's begin by talking about the categories that we have retired this year. And there are some new ones. These are the list of categories that are no longer available this year: specialty assignment report, sports one-time special, sporting game, short form program, sports play-by-play, and audio. We don't remove categories lightly. We don't take that, we take it very seriously. But when a category doesn't have enough competition or when it's been replaced by something else, we go ahead and do that because we try to keep the show under 6 hours. I'm being facetious, more like under 3.5 hours. And we have 2 contests to deal with. So if there's not enough competition in a category, we move on. Let's talk about some of the new categories we have this year. We used to have a category called General Assignment Report. And you can blame me for this one here. I served on the national committee this year as we were putting together some of these categories of news. And we've changed the title to Daily News Report. And the timing on this, you'll see single shift. In other words, we used to have 24 hours, but people were taking advantage of the 24 hours. And sometimes they would shoot it one day and it would air the next, and it might air 27 hours after they started. So the Academy has now decided, and I think it's a good call, basically what you do, you go in the morning, you put your work together, and you put it on the air or on the internet or whatever that day, one single shift. This is the kind of stuff that basically goes into comes off the assignment desk. This is designed for the reporters that come in every day, and they may not know what they get. They do that 115-year-old woman's birthday party, and they turn it to gold. That's the kind of shift for you. Now, there's another addition here, category 6, hard news report, which also kind of comes in the same category. And that is for the stories that would have gone more than 24 hours. We have ruled out, for example, investigative reports. You can't edit them, or specialty reports. If you do consumer reports, you're going to have a hard time getting that in there. But I would also add that we have, this is where it gets wonky, and I'm sorry. Because we have changed, as you'll see later, the definition of investigative reports and made it stricter, there are cases where we will allow that. But we're going to be very, very tough on what we allow and what we don't allow. You'll have to prove to us that it was simply labeled that way and that it wasn't. So if it doesn't meet our new stricter standard, it moves on. Okay, next categories we've changed: breaking or spot news. Used to be just one category, breaking news. And again, we had issues with that, where we would see entire staffs entering all their fire coverage. And that didn't seem right. So for the reporter in the field who does the one great story on the one breaking news story, we have added a single report. That means you're not going to compete against an entire newsroom. And, good. We think we needed that. Same thing with multiple reports. This is probably where you would put more than one report from a news staff. It's kind of like continuing coverage. Continuing coverage we've added. And that allows, when you do something like a breaking news story, you could put it there. It depends on how long it runs. But this is really for the kind of story where let's say you do a big story or an expose on something, and then you do follows, and then you do another follow, and you do another follow. So you could take that big breaking story and extend some of your coverage on, for example, a large fire over the weeks and months. You could put it there. Or you could put any other kind of story that continues and continues and continues. So they're looking at the length and the breadth and the depth of that coverage. So we like that. Specialty assignment reports, I think we have it covered. We've added more categories to cover some of those areas. Whereas it used to be everybody would be commentary, it would be technology or a bunch of stuff. We would lump together categories that weren't otherwise covered. Consumer, we've now given consumer their own category. We've given business their own categories, as you'll see, which eliminated the need for specialty assignment reports. Now, you're going to see a word specialty content as opposed to program. Content replaces the words program. And the reason is that we have more than programs these days. We have internet, we have all these other sources. So when you see content, think program, but content makes it easier for internet type entries to go ahead and get in there. Here's one of the categories I talked about adding that was in the specialty category before. There was a request for business reporting and consumer reporting. So we broke it out this year, and we're going to see how much competition we have in that category. So there are two divisions of it: news and short form content, which means up to 10 minutes, and then long form content, which would be longer, up to the limits allowed by the academy. We've also added education in schools. Again, short form and long form. That's something we didn't have before. It was divided differently, but we figured that with COVID-19 and all the emphasis on education this year, it deserved its own category. So this is something we will do at least for this year, and then we'll take it from there. But we're going to give it a look for a year. Environment and sciences is now separate. Again, news and short form content and long form content. And the reason this is different is because we broke that category up, and we took medical out of there. And because of COVID-19, we've made medical its own category. So if you have COVID-19 stories, that might be a place to put it: health and medical. We added another category called politics, government, societal concerns. And this is, if you look at the definition, it's pretty clear. This was a request from the Spanish contest. They felt that it was more appropriate for the kind of material they produce. And we liked it for English. So we're going to give that a run this year. But read the definition of politics, government, societal concerns. There's a whole new area for you to enter. It's kind of like public affairs, but it's different. If you have questions, feel free to call us and we'll try to explain more to you on that. Now, we also broke out technology. We figured we're living in a hub. Why should technology be in a category with other material? So technology, for this year at least, is now broken out and it's its own special genre. So that's another specialty. Craft achievement. We thought about all the line producers. This is a very popular ad, at least among most of us. We thought about all the line producers and what they do in the course of a day. So we added this category because we felt they deserve some recognition. When you look at what they do in the course of a day, we felt that was a craft worthy of recognition. This is a category where I believe you're allowed 5 lifts from 5 different newscasts, 5 segments. There's a time limit on it. You'll see that when you look in the entries. Photographer news is now one category. We have combined within 24 hours and no time limit. The reason we did that is we didn't have enough entries in both those categories. So now it's one. And if you were one of those people that says you can't compete against somebody who's got more time to do one of these entries, remember that the judges understand the difference between what you can do in a day and what you can do over a long period of time. And personally, when I look at something and I recognize that someone had less time or resources, I tend to score up for them. So those are combined. And don't let that discourage you. Spanish contest, we had more changes. Some of them are very similar. These are the categories that we removed, and we did this in consultation with our Spanish members of the awards committee. Daytime newscast Spanish, smaller newscast Spanish, investigative report Spanish, arts and entertainment Spanish, sports program Spanish, art sports anchor Spanish, audio Spanish. These were all categories that had very few entries. And we are all about making a competition that is in fact a competition. It shouldn't be where you just enter and you have free reign to go home with a statue. Daily news report Spanish is a single shift, same as in English. Hard news report Spanish, same as in English. Again, we divided the general assignment categories into 2. One for 24 hours or less, single shift, and one for hard news Spanish, longer time. So this would be something you worked on over a period of time that was hard news that really doesn't fit into any other category. Business, consumer Spanish, we added that. This was a request actually from Spanish. And we liked it so much that we added it to English as well. So Spanish now has a business consumer category. We'll see how that goes. Enter. Spanish asked for a crime category. I don't think we duplicated that in English this year, but Spanish felt that this was something they do a lot of, and we're happy to honor that, and we're looking for a lot of entries in category 61. Education, school Spanish, same explanation here as in English. This is a result of COVID-19 and all the school stories that we've done, so it's a place to put some of those entries. This is a one-year trial. Let's see how it goes. 63, politics and government, Spanish, same as English. We felt that this is one of those years, especially with the presidential election, that politics and government are going to get a lot of coverage. So if you've done in any of the Spanish or English, if you have done a lot of political stories, you now have a place to put them, a specialty area of your own to put them. And again, we will see how this goes this year. This was a one-year ad. If it continues to be popular, then we'll look at it, including it next year. So support your local category. Societal concerns Spanish, that was another request from Spanish. And we liked it so much in English, we put it in English. Again, this is a little bit like current affairs. It's kind of an open book. Read the definition and see if that applies to you. But this is kind of it's almost like human interest. It's that kind of broad generalization. But it's another place to put your material that you think is appropriate. We added line producer in Spanish, as we did in English. And we have added video journalist in Spanish, category at 80. And again, now we have gotten rid of the 24 hours and no time limit. There just were not enough entries to support 2 categories. Give us more entries, and we'll split them up again. That applies to both English and Spanish. Okay, now, have you all read the rules? Because when we look at stuff at the end of the year, when we certify, we want to make sure that you have done what you're supposed to do. when we look at an entry, we want to make sure that it fits the criteria as defined in the category. The first thing we ask is, does the category fit? We want to confirm that the entries are based on their descriptions. If they're not, we flag them, we send you an email. I'll give you an example. We have stay in your lane policies for categories like sports. You're going to have to convince us that a sports story belongs in the feature category. So make sure your entry fits the category. Another issue we've had continually over the years is with the internal edits on an entry. You are not allowed, you are instantly disqualified if we discover that you have made an edit within an entry or a lift. By a lift, we mean a segment that you put into a category. That means no post-productions. That means no montages. We want to see the material as it appeared, or at least the finished cut. You don't have to give us what aired on television or on the internet. You can give us something from the master tape, but let's make sure that you have not made any changes. And again, we can always go to the internet and check and see if there's a change in that piece. And again, that would be just an instant disqualification for us. At the same time, when I talk about no internal edits, I want to make sure that when you do a composite this year, and this is something that we deal with every year, every time you go to a different lift, write this down, red letter item. Every time you go to a different lift, we want 2 seconds of black between it. Okay, that keeps us from having a montage. That shows us that we're looking at something different, that there were no internal edits in whatever you did. So anytime you make an edit on your reel, 2 seconds of black, please. That is incredibly essential. When you enter, we want you to go to the master list, especially when that comes out after everything is in. And we want to look at your category. And because we get more than 1,000 entries, we need help from you in terms of making sure that everything entered is appropriate. That means take a look at the other entries in your category in the master list. If something strikes you as being inappropriate or outside of the time period or in violation of the rules, don't contact that person yourself. Contact us, give us a flag, and we will look at it. But you need to do so before we send this stuff in, okay? Not after, and certainly not after the nominations come out, or as we had in one case a few years ago, after we awarded the Emmy. We want to be as fair as everybody else and fair to everyone. So look early and look often. And if you see something you suspect as not being appropriate for an entry that we don't know about, that we might have missed, and believe us, we do miss stuff, let us know and we'll examine it further. Okay. You all know about double dipping, right? I'm going to tell you just again what double dipping. That means essentially you cannot receive an Emmy for doing the same work in the same job function twice. Not going to happen. In other words, if you are a writer, reporter, if you're a reporter, you can't get an Emmy for submitting as a reporter in a production category and then turn around and enter that same material in a craft. Now, you could call yourself something else. We do allow that. You can call yourself a producer, another job function. But bottom line is, we're not going to give you the same job title, same work, same Emmy twice. And if you need to look at the categories that we have that are allowing double dipping or not. I mean, basically, Darryl, what allows, is there anything at this point that allows a double dip? Is it station excellence?
Yeah, station excellence is still exempt.
Yeah. Bottom line, ask us. Again, just look at our email, send us a phone number, and I will get on the phone to you, or one of our committee members will get on the phone to you. We want to solve these problems in advance. Let me give you an example of double dipping. I wrote it down here. Let's say a reporter enters the on-camera talent category under that description. He cannot also win as a reporter in the main news or program category. You need to change the job description to producer. We've talked about that. That same thing applies to, let's say you're a photographer and you want to get it on the program entry, but you also want to keep it on your photography reel. You're going to write yourself down as a producer, but we're going to ask you straight up, what role did you do in producing that was different from shooting? So we're going to be a little stricter on that this year. It's not an automatic double entry anymore. There are exceptions to double difting. You know, if you enter in a program category and did another role, you can put it in a craft category. Technically speaking, if you're a reporter on a programming or content entry, pardon me, I'm still bad habit. You could enter as a reporter in that content entry, but then you could turn around and also enter as a writer with that same work, and you could enter as a talent with that same work, but not under the same title. You got to change the title. Okay. Again, if you have questions, just ask us. We're happy to help you. Okay.
Repeat that again, Wayne. No, sorry, hi, Wayne. Repeat that again of the title.
You can if you perform more than one function on an entry, you can enter it in a craft category as well for that function. But we don't want to see the same title twice. And if we think you've made up a title, we're gonna be tough on you about that. We're gonna ask. So you're gonna have to justify it. We thought it would be helpful if we showed you how to deal with Emmy Express. Darryl, do you want to take this part over since you're more?
Sure. All right. So this is the Emmy Express website, mesf.tv. And you'll notice at the top of the screen, it says Emmy Express. So if you click on Emmy Express, this is how you get into your account. So you would put in your number and password, and then you would say that you are not a robot. And then click on sign in, and you get a new 2-stage notification, which means that they just called my cell phone with the token. Let me find that. They've really tightened up the security thing because we've had some hackers that were trying to get into the system. So then you come to your dashboard, and when you get to your dashboard, this is the first place you will go to renew your membership to make sure that your membership is up to date and to pay your dues for this year. So you can either pay for 1 year, 2 years, or 3 years. 2 years, you get 5% off. 3 years, you get 10% off. So renew your membership so it is current, because you will need that in order to get into the entry system. So when you're going to do a new entry, you just click on New Entry. Get a draft. So the first thing that comes up is the category, and you have to first enter the type that you're doing. So these are the major headers then on the call for entries, both for English and for Spanish. So we'll do a news content entry in English, and then the subcategories will come up. So you click on that, and here are all the categories for news content that are under those things. And we'll say we're going to do a news feature light. So that would come up. And then you would continue to the next page, and you put in a title. And the chapter is already filled in. The subchapter area would be for San Francisco Bay Area. And then the station that it's coming from, let's do it for KGO. And then you have to put in the date when it would first aired. So we'll put in, and the length is very important. So put in hours is 0, minutes is seconds. Content was produced for a regional audience. This is the new button that you need to push now that says, yes, this was created for a regional audience. Otherwise, they're going to send you to the national Emmys and you're not going to be able to enter it. Then you would put in a description. And then go on to the next section where you would enter the entrance. Add me, because I'm an entrant. And then since I'm already a member, it says it's going to charge me $75. If I was not a member, it would add a different price on it. And the role that you had in the entry.
I think the date's messed up. If you fix the 1, maybe.
You can add additional entrants. And then they will, on the additional entrants, it should look up if you have like Wayne's email address. We have a brand new thing this year for composites. So as you're filling out the entry form and you get the local concerns, you see a little button over here that says composite if it's a composite category. When you see that, you click composite. And then when you go to the next one, you would put your name in. Because I'm the photographer, so there's only one entrance on it, and then continue to composite. When you click on continue to composite, you'll get this screen up that has the 5 segments that you're going to put in. So you would put in the time code or the lift time of each of the 5 segments that you're putting in, what date it aired, and what the slug was on it, what the title is on it. This is going to really help the judging staff when, it's not the judging staff, the awards committee, when they do their certification, and we look for double dipping, because we'll have the list now of each of the composites and where they came from. So this is where we'll check for double dipping. So make sure that you have the correct date and you have the correct slug number on the composite. And I think this will be a big help, easier for you when you're entering. Instead of having to put all that stuff in the description, you now put it into the to the composite side.
Bottom line on that is, if you're doing a composite, we need to know every single lift, when it aired, where it came from, so we can cross-check. And I know it's a lot of work for you, but it's a lot more work for us. So please honor that.
When you submit the entry, then it will take you to the next section you can now submit additional entries, or you can go to the pay side and pay for it. And then you can upload the video. If you do a whole sequence of entries, then it'll all go on one invoice, and then you can pay that invoice. If you click and pay separately, then you would have to do a credit card for each entry that you get into. So I won't go into the pay section right now, but the big thing on the pay section, the biggest mistake that is made is when you put your credit card number in and submit, the default that comes up on the screen will probably be your station address, because that's what's in the database. And when the credit card comes up, the credit card has your home address on it. So it will say ABS mismatch, meaning that the address on the credit card does not match the address that you have on the system. So you need to type in your home address and then click pay, and it will go through. The other thing on the entry form that is really important, Wayne kept stressing to call us or contact us. Whenever you send an email or whenever you call us, be sure you have the entry ID number that you want to discuss. Put that on the email in the subject line, and always when you do a voicemail message, leave that also. We have over 1,000 entries this year, potentially, and we want to make sure that we're answering those in each one, but it helps if we have the actual ID number. So with that, I'll kick it.
Kind of give you a primer that comes from more than a little experience of entering this contest through trial and error from a guy who didn't win an Emmy for 3 or 4 years, and then started winning a few. So, one of the things we look at every year is people who throw the kitchen sink into their entry. That doesn't work. You got to remember that it may be good work, but judges are not going to award you an Emmy Award just for doing your job. It needs to be excellent. I believe in this idea that you counter program within a category, or that you develop something that nobody has ever seen before. You do something that advances the medium. But this comes down to the idea that you really need to manage the time of your entry. And that also comes down to, don't waste the judge's time. They appreciate it when an entry is brief. It also gives them an opportunity to look at the whole thing. Brevity really works to an entrant's advantage. I know you don't believe that. I know you want them to see everything. But remember, when they're looking at your everything, they're looking at everybody else's everything. So you want your entry to be really sharp, kind of like you want to leave them wanting a little bit more. It's kind of like a resume tape. You want them to watch that entry from beginning to end and not scrub through. If they scrub, you're in trouble. You want them to get to the end naturally. You want to start strong. And you want to finish even stronger. It's like a sales reel. So make sure that you manage the time in your submission. And remember that judges are not going to look at the entire thing if you're more than 5 minutes. Under 5 minutes, they're required to watch the entire entry. Those of you who judged know this. You see the clock that comes into the frame that says you have watched 45% of this entry or whatever. So under 5 minutes, always good. That means they're going to watch the whole thing. Between 5 minutes and 15 minutes, they only have to watch 50%. So if your entry runs 5 minutes and 3 seconds, and that includes countdowns and anchor intros and all the other stuff, they only have to watch half of it. You want them to watch as much as you can. Anything over 15 minutes, judges are only going to watch 25%. That means they're going to start scrubbing. You don't want to do that. So every second counts. It's like a broadcast. You want it tight. You want it riveting. You want them to watch. You want them to appreciate what you're doing. Let me give you a practical example of how you manage your time. Let's say you're entering a spot news category. And your piece begins by showing the opening of the broadcast. And that takes you over the 5 minute mark. Well, you're only hurting yourself. The same thing applies. Let's say you're doing a talent entry and you open with the anchor introducing you. Well, first of all, you're starting a talent entry with somebody else. And secondly, you're opening up and you're taking too much time. You're wasting the time of the judges. I think you need to remember that, and please, that this is a television contest. Yes, content matters. It always matters. But judges are looking for somebody who's going to do more than just a good job. The judges, they expect to be entertained, enlightened, inspired, wowed. They look for work that demonstrates excellence and that advances the medium. So when you craft your entry, remember, this is not just a news contest. It's a video television contest. So you need to build your reel, build your entry, build your composite as if you were putting together a broadcast or a story. You need to give it a flow or a rhythm. That means you finish stronger. You start strong and you finish even stronger than you finished. And remember that a winning entry does not always follow convention. For example, composite categories allow as many as 5 lifts. That doesn't mean put 5 lifts in your composite entry. If it allows 2 to get in there, and if you can make your case in 2, do it. I won a few awards over the years with composite entries that were 2 entries. One to impress the judges on my ability, and the second one to sell it. In and out. 3.5, 4 minute entries are going to make a huge difference. First cut establishes your credibility. Second cut sells the judges. You seal it with the second. So you don't have to put in 5, okay? Put in as few and as short as you need to make your case and make your point. Now, as an entry, you're going to find it's difficult to edit yourself. So try to look at your entry from the perspective of a judge who doesn't know your work, who is not going to give you the inside strike for being cute, who doesn't see you every day, who never saw you from anywhere else. That's really important. You got to look at it objectively You got to be really tough. You got to be your own worst critic. Look at it as a judge and have your friends look at it and tell your friends, don't tell me what's good about it. Have your friends tell you what's bad about it. You've got to be really tough. Same as putting a story together. As far as the pricing goes, the explanation of what you're doing, cold fact, nobody ever won an Emmy Award with the Pracies. But it is true that many people have lost an Emmy Award with the Pracies. So look, I mean, keep your Pracies short, keep it humble. I would use it almost as an introduction or as a tease. Tell the judges what they need to know so they can better understand your work, the time constraints, what you're doing, how it came to be, and do not sing your own praises. Again, I'm telling you, be humble. For a longer entry, and this is crucial, okay, where they probably are going to scrub, your Pracies could serve as a roadmap. So if you know that you've got a 30-minute special you're putting in, and they may not watch the whole 30-minute special, there's nothing wrong with that Pracies and saying, please pay particular attention to what happens at the 14:25 mark or another mark down the line. In other words, help them scrub to the places where it's going to be to your best benefit. Do not leave that to chance. An example, as this is a lengthy entry, note what we consider to be some of our best moments. You'll find them from 1:36 to 2:58, 6 minutes to 9:27, 25 minutes to 30 minutes. The judges will appreciate that, and you're probably going to get a higher score from that. The last thing I would tell you, well, not the last, but it's important, is this concept of universal appeal. And if you read my book, there's a whole chapter on universal appeal. The best example I could give you is a friend, worked in Memphis, Tennessee, calls me up and says, I just won my first Emmy. I said, why? He goes, I kicked everybody's butt. I said, send the reel. Sends the story. And he really did. He kicked everybody's butt. But I said to him, Brian, you're not going to win an Emmy with this. He goes, why not? I said, it required too much local knowledge. I said, the judges aren't going to get it. So the ideal entry is something that speaks to everyone anywhere. It really is a universal story. I mean, that's what we do every day. If you're a North Bay reporter and you go to the South Bay, you got to do a story in the South Bay that appeals to the North Bay. We do that every day in what we do, especially in news. So universal appeal, you want to make entries that anyone can relate to, that anyone can feel something about. Because again, these judges are not going to give an inside strike to a stranger. Okay, so think about the people who are looking at it again, and make sure that what you're showing them isn't just technically good, but that it resonates with them on an emotional level. That makes a huge difference. Something they remember, something they want to see, something they look at the end and say, yeah, this was really important, and I got that. Makes a huge difference. In terms of technical issues, an entry should begin immediately. You don't give them a color bars. You don't give them a slate. We wouldn't allow that anyway. A countdown should not last more than 4 seconds. It's not bad to give them a countdown because that's when they know they can start. But those 4 seconds are taken away from your first 5 minutes. Remember that. So be careful and judicious as what you use. When you go to that dip to black, it shouldn't last more than 2 seconds. For credibility and for the sake of the rules, and because you don't want us to catch you, you need to enter that segment as aired. We've talked about that. And here's a common error we see all the time, especially if you take from the edit piece and not what aired. Make sure that you make your entries mixed. We don't want to hear channel 1 on the left and channel 2 on the right. We want them mixed. You don't want to leave that to chance. And the other issue is when you're looking at the right side and the left side, it calls attention to the fact you're looking at a story and the judge is kind of listening this way and this way. You want them to watch the piece and not be aware of anything else like an audio mix. They don't want to hear that part. They want to see as it aired. So mix your audio, right channel, left channel into one channel. Take away all those chances. Last item is make sure that before you submit your entry, you look at it. There are times we look at stuff that comes in, it doesn't have audio, it's got double edits, it's got double cuts, something's left out, and then you have to re-edit it again. So check what you do before you send it to us. Finally, and I'm just going to say this because these issues come up for year, and this is just your awards chair talking. You know, the Emmys have a way of bringing out the absolute best in people and sometimes bringing out the worst. We want to encourage the former and discourage the latter. There is a spirit to this competition, and that means you win straight up, okay? Follow the rules. Make sure you're not duplicating anything. Make sure you're not stealing from somebody else's material. Make sure that you include everyone who worked on a piece and you check with them beforehand to make sure they want to be on that entry. I mean, and the best example I can give you for following the spirit of the Emmys was a few years ago. There was a reporter who covered a really good event. I'm not going to tell you what it was because I might give it away. But it was a really good event, a major breaking news story, and did a really good job. And submitted it. And then the Nightside reporter also submitted his version of the story. The Nightside reporter's version used lines of track, same pictures, same sequences, same sound bites as the entry from the morning reporter. You know, he really shouldn't have done that. So again, abide by the spirit of the Emmys. Take your hat off to somebody. Check with the other people you're working with. I don't want to hear from anybody. We don't want to hear from anybody. We heard from a manager a couple of years ago who said, I asked, why did you do that? He goes, well, we thought we could get away with it. We're serious about this. Okay. So let me answer some of the ones in chat first.
Hey, Wayne, it's Melanie, if you don't mind taking that continuing coverage question.
Well, I think I answered it for you. The answer you had is there a continuing coverage for individual reporters so you're not competing with the whole station on continuing coverage? The answer is no. There was not enough demand for that. But I believe that if the work is strong enough, it's going to stand up. And again, when the judges look at this, they're going to recognize the difference between what a station did and what an individual did. So you've got to trust the process on that. Aaron asks, Aaron Vogel, if we enter a newscast and a reporter wants to enter his or her package from that newscast, do they have to use a different job title? Absolutely. And that's going to be questionable as it is. If you're just making up a job title to enter.
No, it's not the job title. Material on that one.
Material?
This year,
is double dipping allowed in newscast or not?
This year, double dipping is not allowed in newscasts. So
Okay.
we have always said newscasts were exempt. This year, they are not. So if a story is in the newscast being submitted, it cannot be submitted as an individual story.
There you go.
It can still be submitted as a craft but not as an individual story.
But again, if you enter it in a craft, you're going to need to change your title.
Well, if your name is on the entry form on the newscast, yes. If your name is not on the entry form and it's just the producer, then you can enter it as a craft as the reporter.
Okay, so Shane, the answer to your question is tougher than the answer I gave you privately. Paula Marquez, Keski, did the 2 seconds of black rule apply to the overall excellence reel? Yes. Given the length and number of lifts in those reels, 1 second of black would be enough? Sure. As long as we recognize that that it is a different lift, I think it's fine. Yeah, that's fine. Melanie, if you have an investigation that resulted in continuing coverage and if it meets the investigative criteria, I said, oh, this is from Melanie, about continuing coverage. I talked to her about that. Can you remind us how to pay multiple invoices on one card? Kim Burrows. Darryl, do you want to answer that one?
If their entries are all put together at the same time as I was going through it, and the one person entering, then they can put all on one card. If they are all separate entries that people have submitted separately, and the only way to do that is a station dashboard, you have to call me and we have to set you up as a station dashboard so that you would pay for the entries for that particular station. Otherwise, you have to enter the credit card each time.
Thank you so much.
Okay. From Jordan, for craft achievements, can you enter a composite into a single shift entry? Each segment was done in a single shift. Yeah, they would be required that they would all be single shift. It's as simple as that. If it says single shift, everything has to be a single shift. Vernon Glenn had a question about what about the anchor insert packages within a sportcast? He says, these are packages I've shot, written, and edited. I've included this in the past because that allowed this year. If you did them, yes. I think so. But if he's talking about sports anchoring, we'll have to discuss that in detail. But I think if you did your own work, I think you're okay. Shane Calvert is, why is categories 37 split for MMJs, but the photogs and editors are combined? Shane, the answer to that question is number of people who enter the categories. More people enter, we'll split them again. Show us we need to split, we will do so. But there weren't enough last year. Justin Mendoza, what determines how many nominees there are in a category? How many? 8, 9, 10 scores? Maybe sometimes we've seen no nominations. Justin, that is a really good question. And we do something called blind judging. And we don't know what we're looking at. We only know we're doing an English contest and a Spanish contest. We do at this point know how many entries there are in a category if there are less than 10. But we look at numbers and we grade every category based on a curve, and then we grade the contest on a curve as well. So it's really up to what the judges decide. You know, there are categories that don't deserve nominations because of the numbers. It's just plain and simple as that. We had some large categories that way last year too, especially in Spanish, and one that was fairly controversial. But those were the numbers. And we do go by the numbers. And the problem is we're not aware of what category we're scoring when we do the blind scoring. Second question, he says, I know the judge's time matters, but generally speaking, do they find value in an intro and tag and a submission? Obviously, if it's amazing, keep it. If it's somewhat weak, don't include. Again, you're building your own entry, Justin. You can be the judge on that. There's no hard and fast answer. You know what works best for your entry. Okay, more questions from anybody? Just raise your hand and we'll have at it. Is it a bad idea to put 2 stories in the same category? Kim, to everyone. Again, Kim, I think that depends on the entries, but it does mean you're competing against yourself. But if the stuff is if both those entries are good, there are plenty of examples where in other chapters where we see the same person nominated sometimes 2 or 3 times in a category. So the answer is there's no direct answer, but quality is quality. If it's good, it's good. But remember, you will be competing against yourself. And if the first piece they looked at was not as good as the second piece, you're going to have a tougher sell on that one. Hopefully that answers your question. Any other questions for people?
Hey, my name is Kwong. I have a production company that did a series of videos for the San Jose Museum of Art. I think that I emailed with Darryl a couple weeks ago. That there's only news categories can accept a video series. Is that correct? If it's a documentary series, it's only a single video, a single entry that can be entered. Is that correct?
Are you talking about a documentary series, or are you talking about arts and entertainment?
It was for the San Jose Museum of Art, so I would consider it a documentary series.
I don't think there's anything that prevents that material from getting in there. Is there, Darryl? We have all kinds.
No, that's fine. Yeah, you can.
We have two documentary categories.
Uh-huh.
You know, one would fit with the other, but you're talking about a series of stuff. Is that correct?
Yeah, I guess my question is, we produced four videos for them. So is it if I'm looking at like historical and artistic, I think the category that seems the most appropriate is, I think cultural or historical. Can I apply with the series of the documentary series, or just one of them?
They would each be separate entries.
Okay, so I could.
It's not a composite category, so you can't put more than one. You can, if it's a series program, you can enter one program out of the series, or you can enter several programs, but they would be separate entries.
Got it.
We would also add that once you enter that material in a category, you can't go cherry picking in different categories with material.
Sure.
Same stuff. It's got to stay where it's at.
But I have a question about his entry. Did it only air at the museum?
It's not a broadcast. It's on their website.
Oh, that's fine.
Because it's as long as it is a public website that the public can enter, that's called the internet category, and it is legal to enter it with the Northern California Emmys. If it's just a straight private channel, on YouTube or a private website that is not public, then you cannot enter it. So it has to be available to the public. That's the key word.
Okay, yeah, it is open to it's on the website, public website. So I think probably sending the strongest for the strongest piece for a single category might be the smartest way to go. Thanks, guys.
It is. If that message got through.
Great, thanks.
Hi, this is Lisa Gonzalez from KCRA. Quick question about the 4 p.m. newscasts. Are they going to be moved to the evening category anytime soon, or are they going to stay in the daytime category?
4 p.m. is daytime up to 5 p.m., so it would still be in the daytime category.
Has there been any talk about moving those, since the 4 p.m.s are usually anchored by the evening anchors, and they use usually the same staff it's usually the same staff that's doing the 5 p.m.
That is something that you can ask for next year. The timeline is already set in the rules for this year, so up to 5 p.m. So for this year, it is still considered a daytime.
So Lisa, if you write a note, we can run that by national, but this rule is not set by us. So
okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm. Anybody else? I expected more questions. Fellow committee members, is there anything we left out that we need to talk about?
Another quick question, Wayne, from Lisa Gonzalez. In the talent categories, in that short composite, what are some of the things that you like to see? I think it's hard, especially for anchors, if you've anchored 6 hours, it's hard to know what to pick. What do you think does best?
That is a really good question. Last year, Dion Lim won that Emmy, and she had come to me and she goes, "What should I enter?" And I told her, and this is true, and this probably applies to things like directing too, if you have a PL track. Like, anchoring should not be a reading stories and pitch award. It ought to show what an anchor does best, which is landing that airplane in a 50-mile-an-hour crosswind on an icy runway. In short, an anchor working without a script. Dion's entry last year was exactly that. It was her off-the-cuff coverage of the shooting down in San Jose and in Gilroy at the Garlic Festival. That won her the Emmy because it wasn't just reading; it was reporting from behind the desk. Heck of a way to do it. And I waited for years for somebody to put up an entry like that, and she did, and it worked. That might be some advice, but I mean, otherwise, people reading the news and anchoring and pitching, it gets old. So you got to do something that stands out. And again, it comes to this idea that you counter program within a category. You find that you follow the rules, yes, and then having followed the rules, you make it different enough to make it stand out. Darryl just put up on the screen. These are blind scorings. This is what we work with every year when we decide who receives an Emmy and who gets a nomination. What you're looking at there is what we look at when we sit down in that room and we make these decisions. You'll notice it doesn't say category. It just gives you a roll of numbers established by the judges. In most categories, content, creativity, and execution, unless it's a craft category in which it's just creativity and execution, and then we round up. But you see the variance in numbers. Now, technically speaking, by the rules of the Academy, we shouldn't be giving an Emmy to anything less than 90. In reality, we do. But every year we seem to establish a cutoff where we say we're not going to award below this point. And we try to follow guidelines by the Academy that 25% of an entry, 25% of entries are nominated, that 10% receive Emmys. This year, for example, in English of all bunches, we were low. But instead of going down lower to give awards for entries that received low numbers, we went up. If you look, for example, the category 33 right there, we gave both to the 8810s. And because they were both award worthy. Same thing in category 30. They were all over 90. So we went back and gave everyone in that category an Emmy. So instead of going down and dipping down to get that percentage, we went up, which partially explains, Justin's question of why were there categories with no entries? Well, because they didn't merit an award. The reality is that we do not nominate if there's no recipient anymore. We learned that the hard way, and it's hard because a nomination is in fact an award in its own right. But there was so much bad blood from people who would be nominated and come to the awards and find out they didn't receive an Emmy that we just went the other way with it. But is this clear to everybody what we're looking at here? The reds were the recipients. The yellows were the nominees. And anything else did not make the cut. Questions?
Wayne, it's Terry Russell from Reno. I don't know if you went over this. I didn't hear it, but you may want to explain why you print the nominations, or not, excuse me, the entrants. Hey, here's this category. You have chances to alter, put yourself in another category, or I know some people, maybe their name's spelled wrong or their title is not what they want.
Yeah, we talked about that to a degree. We talked about when the...
Okay. That's really important. A week after the deadline we have, then we have a week later that you can upload your video, and we will accept late entries during that week for a $25 penalty for each entrant. And then the following Monday of that, the list is put up on the website, and you can check to make sure that everything was submitted as you submitted it. Make sure things are spelled right. Like when things are all put in capitals, I have to go through and change it into upper lowercase. And with my dyslexia, sometimes I will type somebody's name wrong. So check those to make sure that it's spelled right and that all the names are on there. Then you will have another week there to make changes. And at this point, until certification starts, you can still change categories for a $25 fee. In other words, if you look at your category and you say, gee, I don't have a chance in this category because I can see all these other ones that are in there, I'm going to move it to a different category where there's only 5 entries. You can do that, and there's a $25 charge to move that category. So you can move categories up until certification starts, which is the last weekend in January. Certification is when the awards committee goes through and looks at every entry and make sure that there's no double dipping and that it fits the category and all the rules are met. And that's when you get the nasty notes from the awards committee saying you got to fix this or it's going to be disqualified. The other date that is up is that master list will stay up on the website, and you have until the end of March to add additional names. Once certification is done, you can't change categories or delete your entry anymore or remove it, but other names can be added. If you find that your name is missing from a category, you need to contact the person that did the entry. Whoever filled out the entry form has to send me an email and say this person needs to be added. And then we would add you and send you an invoice, and you would pay the entry fee. Again, there's a $25 processing fee to do that, but you have until the end of March in order to add additional names to the entry. And that's very important because once April 1st comes along and we go into the getting ready for the nominations and the scoring is coming back from the other chapters that are scoring, that are looking at our entries, once those nominations come out, it is final, and the names that are on there are the only names that are going to be nominated and eligible to receive a statue. If you can't come back that point and say, my name isn't on there, I need it added, you have until March 31st to do that. So please tell your friends to take a look at it, make sure that everything is proper, because once that score is done after March 31st, then there's nobody else added. And especially after June, when the actual trophies come out, there's no more trophies. You can, if you worked on a entry that is nominated and receives a statue as a recipient, then you can purchase a production plaque or a production certificate or wall plaque, but not the actual statue. So those are kind of the rules that we have to abide by. And it's kind of very firm that a lot of excuses come in why your name wasn't on there, but it's too late after the fact. Hope that helps.
A couple more questions. One from Ernest White asking for a 10-episode docuseries, which entry type would be preferable? One full half-hour episode from the series, or a 5-minute composite of the highlights from the series? The question mostly. The first question, Ernest, is does that category allow composite? If it doesn't, you can't do a composite. Otherwise, you need to enter every segment
From that series. If it was composed of segments, you would need to enter them separately as content. Otherwise, enter the full thing and take our advice in terms of putting the highlight moments in your précis so they don't miss that, and let it stand on its own. That's not a bad way to go. So I can't answer your question in terms of what is preferable. You need to make that decision based on the content. I've just sent you my phone number. If you have more questions, feel free to call. Any of you. If you want to continue this discussion, write this number down. It's 415-672-9144. 415-672-9144. That's my number direct. Or you can email me directly, wayne.friedman at, emmyonline.tv. What is it? wayne.friedman at emmyonline.tv. But please include your phone number. And another question from Shane Calvert: any chance of bringing back the photo essay category? Shane, there weren't enough photo essays to make a competition, but we did retain the photographer category, and you're up against the gang on that one now. It's still a photography category. It doesn't discern what kind of entry you put together up there. Anybody else? Pamela?
Yeah, I just wanted to make a comment. There are some stations where the managers put out a notice and say, if you have anything you think is Emmy worthy, let us know. And they turn over the decision-making to management. And then later, people find out their names were not on a particular entry. So I'm just urging everyone to take this into their own hands. Make sure that they know what is being entered from their stations, and if they can, enter it on their own, and just let managers. There has to be some communication so that not all the decisions are made by people who really didn't have much to do with the particular entry.
I would add, communicate with each other when you do these entries. Last year, we had a situation where there was a woman who left a television station, went to work for the competition. She'd worked on a series, and she entered her work in the series. And then the team she worked with entered the work as a series, but the news director did not include her in the entry because the news director was mad at her for leaving. Well, it took a phone call saying, would you please include so-and-so on this entry? And she did. But, get together with the folks. If you work at another station, make sure that the people you work with and everybody you work with know you're entering. And if they're able to get in, let them go. But communicate in advance so we don't have to communicate later, so that it makes things easier for everybody. We wind up, the awards committee winds up sometimes having to negotiate with news directors saying, would you please be nice to this person you can't stand and let her in? And then they go, yeah, okay. But we'd rather not have to do that.
This Terry from Reno again. I can't underscore what Pamela said is go look, go ask. If they're not going to enter your award, scrap the money together and do it yourself. Look on the entry. See if your name's spelled right, if you're even on the entry, what your title is. Don't depend on someone else to get it right for you. And then, don't depend on somebody else, just do it. I mean, we've run into situations where somebody put this and that, and, just don't la-la. If you're serious about this, then take hold of the reins and do it.
Kim Burrows just sent in a question. Can there be 2 winners in a category? No, but there can be 2 recipients. We don't call them winners. We call them recipients. And if you looked at what we just put up there a couple of minutes ago with that blind scoring, you'll see that we did have categories with, so last year we had a category with 3 recipients. They were all over 90. It depends on the numbers. If those numbers reflect excellence, if those numbers are over 90, automatically, if you're over 90, you're going to receive an Emmy. Just happens that way. But again, to answer that question, what we did last year, there were several categories where we didn't nominate because the numbers weren't there. And because we didn't nominate in some categories, we went back to other categories where there would have been one recipient and the scores were very close, and we awarded the second recipient to get the percentage up and to recognize that work. Short answer, Kim, yes. Paula, thanks for doing this. You're welcome. Best of luck. Thank you, Paula. Anybody else?
I had a quick question. I've never submitted for an Emmy, so that's why I'm here today. But so I shot something this summer with my photographer, and I told him I wanted to submit this for an Emmy, and he said that'd be great, but he doesn't necessarily want to be included on that. But when I was watching the how to submit for it, when you submit multiple names, is that where the fees go up, or can I still put his name on the Emmy, or does that just add more to the overall price?
First question is, who are you?
I'm Jenna Liston. I work over at KMPH in Fresno.
Thanks, Jenna. The answer is every name costs money. And poor Darryl goes crazy every year with people who submit many names and don't pay for many names. So it'd be best if you tried to work that out in advance. But again, remember, I mean, once the entries are nominated and once the names come out in nominations, we're not going to add any names. You got to pay your money up front. So you can always put a second name on there, but it's one name per statue. And if you want your name on that statue, you want your name on the entry, you got to pay for it. That's why we have categories with sometimes 12 entries, and anything more than 12, you have to petition us for more than 12. So yeah.
As you're filling out the entry form, it's best that you check with the people that you're going to put on the form to start with. And as I showed you when I was doing the entry form, that you need either their email or their member ID number in order to automatically add them. When you try to add somebody that is not, you have to create a guest user account for them, and you have to have a separate email and their name and their position title on it to be put on the entry form.
And again, it gets more complicated when that second person is not a member of the chapter. So it's not just the entry. You know, it makes sense to join the academy because you get a huge discount on your entry. But if that second person you put on there is not a member of the academy, remember they're going to have to pay to join the academy and pay for the entry form. But again, best to work this stuff out in advance and make life easier on Mr. Compton over there, who gets inundated trying to get.
Let's make sure that we understand that you do not need to be a member of the academy in order to enter the Emmy Awards.
Oh, yeah, I know. True.
There are non-member fees. There are non-member fees that people do not wish to join and just pay the non-member fee. They can do that. We'll probably give them a complimentary member and add them to the list, but there's no requirement that you have to be a member of the academy. So anybody that worked on a production is eligible to have their name on the entry form and to receive a statue. But if their name is not on the entry form, they're not going to receive a statue. So yes, there are non-member entries. On the payment side, I didn't go through the payment side, but you can basically specify if you're going to pay for everybody or if you want them to pay individually. If you click individual, each person that when you submit will get a separate invoice. Those invoices will all appear on your dashboard. That dashboard I showed you when you log in and pay your membership dues or create an entry form. There's also a section on there that says payments due. So you will receive an email that says here's an invoice, and then you will go in and pay that invoice with a credit card. No checks this year.
Question from Jimmy for everyone. I just answered. He says he's submitting for the first time with the new changes in general assignment reports. Does this mean a small market photographer like myself will be competing with the bigger markets? Jimmy, the answer is yes, and that's the way it's always been. General assignment does not specify a large market or small market.
The only tiered categories are newscasts. Newscasts are tiered by market size. Entry fees are tiered by market size. So that says when it says what the market is, and you're in Reno or Chico or Eureka, be sure you check small market, because you're going to pay $45 or $50 an entry instead of $70 an entry, $45 an entry. So we do tier of the entry fees, and we tier on the membership fees, but not on the entry itself. On the competition, it's only the newscasts that are tiered.
Anything else from anybody?
Yeah, Wayne, this is Richard in Fresno. Since we're on the subject of market size, can we bring up the medium market changes in the newscast with daytime and evening this year?
Well, sure. At your request, after we took out daytime newscast for medium market, we put it back in. And the proviso on that is we're gonna see how many entries there are. There weren't enough entries in previous years. I think there were 4. I think we told you there need to be at least 6 to keep this category going. So that's what we're going to do. We also have the option this year, and this came from National, where if we feel that a category does not have enough entries, we may roll it back into something else. We will call you up and say, well, the exact wording, I'm not specific, but let's just take the case of newscast medium market. If there are only 3 entries in that category, it won't be. We will roll that into a one best newscast entry for medium market. But we'll give the participants an option to withdraw if they want to withdraw. But there will be we are putting a minimum on there. Does that answer your question?
Yes, I said.
Okay. So Andrew.
Wayne, what I did is I warned the people in Reno in terms of newscasts that use it or lose it. So I think the same thing for Fresno or anybody else. Enter, so
right.
You don't lose.
Just the way it is. I mean, we, again, can't stress this enough. We want a competitive contest. Just because there aren't a lot of entries in a category does not guarantee that there will be an Emmy in that category. We want competition.
The option goes the other way also. If you can get 20 entries in small market newscasts, and half of them are daytime and half of them are evening, we'll split that into daytime and evening again. That's part of the option the awards committee can do. So the reason that small markets right now just has the single is because of the number of entries we're getting. So daytime and evening are in the same category. But again, if you can come up with enough entries that we can split it and have it judged separately. The other thing we haven't talked about so far is judging, and that is the whole key to making this Emmy process work. And that is that when you submit an entry, that entry is sent off to another market and another chapter within the National Academy. And the National Academy has 19 chapters across the United States. So another chapter will take that category, and there has to be a minimum of 7 judges that look at that entry. So 7 different judges will score your entry on 10 points for content, 10 points for creativity, and 10 points for execution. Those scores are then sent to the accountant, and the accountant then combines all those scores that are entered for a specific category, for a specific entry, and comes up with a mean score for that particular entry. And that's the number that you see on that blind scoring sheet that I showed you with the percentages on it. But to have your entries judged by other categories is so important, and that it means we need to return the favor. So we will be judging other chapters' entries that come in throughout the year. And not all chapters are on the same judging cycle. There are several that are on our cycle, that is of the calendar year. There are a lot that are on a fiscal year calendar where they're June to June type thing, or different times. Even some are September. So we'll be getting judging in from other chapters throughout the year, and I'll send you an email saying that this chapter we're judging, here's the categories. If you were a peer in that category, that means if you work in that category, you're qualified to judge in that category, and we ask you to judge. Again, the judging is now all done on your dashboard. So that dashboard becomes very important that you log in and check it. And on your dashboard, you will see the categories that are available, and then you click and send a note to me saying, I want to judge this category, that category. And then I will click and say, yes, you're approved. And then you will click on that box again, and it will take you to the videos and the score sheet to judge those categories.
Let me just add something.
Go ahead.
Judging should not be a chore. All those tips I gave you on how to enter and the mistakes you make and the mistakes not to make, I pretty much learned all of them by judging. The more you judge, the more you know, and the more you, and oftentimes, we're reciprocal in terms of these awards. Somebody looks at us one year, we look at them. You may get a very good sense of who's looking at our stuff by who you're looking at. And if we're looking at them this year, we might be sending our stuff to them next year. But the other part of it, it just gives you a good sense of the lay of the land. It's a great way to look at television around the country. It's all, some of the stuff you want to get through, but inevitably there's going to be one or two pieces in there that are really cool, that change your attitude, perhaps, that inspire you to do something good. And that's what it's all about. But again, the do's and don'ts, they come from repetition and they come from judging. The more you look, the more you understand what works and what doesn't.
The fine print on the entry form is that if you enter the Emmy Awards, you are signed up to be a judge. So there is a requirement that everybody that enters also is a judge. And there is a bottom line that says that we can catch you next year and make you pay the non-member fees if you didn't judge. So we haven't enforced that yet, but it's one that we can enforce. So if we don't get enough judges, we'll enforce that rule and say, gee, if you weren't a judge, then for next year, you're going to have to pay the non-member fees instead of the regular fees. But if we had an Emmy for the best judge in our chapter, it would go to Pamela Young in Hawaii, who, when the judging comes out, she's the first one to respond and keeps responding and looking at category after category. We just love Pamela and the judging that she does for us. So thank you. And
I learned so much.
It's 11:29. We're supposed to be out at 11:30. So we thank you for participating today. Steve Schlitzky is going to edit this down a little bit to make a shorter version of it. We'll put it up on the website so that you can tell your friends if they missed today and want to hear some of these questions and answers. They can click on that starting next week on the website. Again, thank you for participating. It's been great to have you all with us today.
Thank you, everybody. And feel free to call with questions.